Rightio. Now, there are obviously, as we've heard today already, a number of trends in tourism marketing that are leading to, well, some great success. Just look at Tourism Australia's most recent campaign. That was pretty good. But we thought now that we might explore, you know, what the underlying principles might be for future success, so you can build on what you already know. To explore that for us, our next speaker is Henry Tasia. He's the global CEO for IPG Media Brands. It's a network of media-related agencies. They employ more than 8,500 marketing communication specialists in more than 130 countries. So, ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome Henry Tasia.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. It's actually a little bit strange for me because it's been quite a while since I've had the privilege of getting in front of what looks like a pretty Australian crowd. So I can revert back to pronouncing certain words the way that I was sort of brought up to pronounce them. And for some of you who, or most of you who wouldn't know, for the last few years I've been living in New York in my current capacity, and I've had to adjust my language to ensure that I'm understood. So I will use the word data, not data today, and I promise I will not use the word awesome more than once or twice, I promise you. Really, the purpose for today is really to share some insights to start with, and then to sort of point out some really important points that I think is really, really important for the entire room as it relates to how and what we are seeing evolving and changing around consumers and importantly high-value travellers and customers to the Australian market. I'll do my best to be as succinct as possible so that hopefully we've got some time for questions a bit later on. But just for my own context, just as a show of hands, could I just get a sense of who we have in the room in terms of the stakeholders? STOs, hands up, STOs. Okay, RTOs. Okay, who do we have from hotel groups? From tour operators? Okay. Food and beverage? Is that the right term? It's on my fault. I don't want to insult anyone today. Okay. Have I missed any key groups? Arts and culture? Airports? Okay. And airlines, sorry, that was on my list. Of course, airlines. Okay. Sorry? Attractions. Okay. Very good. Yes? No? Table 27? This is like bingo. Okay. The reason why I want to ask is, all of what we're going to talk about today is hopefully going to give you some insights and hopefully confirm what we've already heard today. But most importantly, hopefully helps everybody realise the importance of how everyone works together and the sequencing and the coordination of that in the modern age. And the reason why that's so important is hopefully what I'll be able to reveal. So at the heart of everything that all of us are dealing with is change. And if you think about change and look at the image that's up on screen now, in the centre of everyone's world now is the mobile device. And that has really changed the game for almost every category in the world. And there are very few categories that are left that have not been disrupted or impacted or improved by the mobile device, the smartphone. And what's really, really important is the images around that phone that were once part of our everyday lives are now all built into the phone. And not only does that create a really convenient and effective way to do more things, but through that process, all of those various utilities and things tools that we use are now connected. And that has had probably the most dramatic impact on how we, as marketers, need to think about engaging and creating attention around the brand, and also with the consumers that we're all fighting to attract and to retain. What has underpinned a lot of that is the rapid rate of the evolution of technology. And what's really, really interesting is every 7 or 8 years, the speed at which technology evolves and changes halves. And if you think about what we have seen in the last 5 years, or in the last 10 years, Facebook turned up. In the last 10 years, Google really became Google. That's nothing, guys. In the next 5 years, we're going to see a much, much more rapid rate of evolution, and with that will come even bigger and greater disruption. So they're the things we now know are going to happen. There is no doubt at all in any part of the world that technology is really having the biggest impact on everyone's day-to-day lives. And as a byproduct of that, everything that brands and destination brands in particular have to fit within the reality of what is accessible through the device and technology to every single individual. So that creates all sorts of really, really exciting opportunities. And what it really means is that how and the way in which we connect meaningfully is evolving and has already evolved. And that evolution is in many parts. The relationship that travellers now have is really, really different. And it was encouraging to hear that on the panel prior that less is more. And what our research and what the data tells us is travellers are wanting a lot more depth as opposed to breadth. And that's a really, really big opportunity for Australia to become not so much a bucket list destination, but a repeat list destination, because we have the opportunity to allow travellers to go deeper and to experience more meaningful and more personalised experiences which will ensure that they return and, importantly, ensure that they become advocates for the brand. And that's the most powerful thing we can do as sort of co-marketers for Brand Australia in the coming few years, knowing what else is going to be happening. What's also important is, and we sort of heard it earlier, really experiencing the cultural reality of a country is really what the high-value audiences are telling us. And through food, entertainment, local produce, that's how the audiences are really, really immersing themselves and really getting to know Australia a lot better. And to really go deep and to really immerse, it takes a lot more time. So on average, what we're seeing in terms of the high-value traveller here is they're doing less, they're spending more, and getting richer experiences that are giving them a reason to come back. And that's something that is a really, really big opportunity. The other thing that's really important and that really points to the need for sequencing, and sequencing at a stakeholder level, is that 85% of travellers curate and organise themselves via their smartphone or mobile from the moment they land. And that's a paradigm shift from what travellers were doing as recently as 2 or 3 years ago, and that's largely through what technology is enabling. So people get here, and the majority of what they do is decided once they get here. So my wife is a classic example of the old-style traveller. She has every minute of the day planned for every day of the holiday. That is not the norm anymore. People are being a lot more spontaneous and are curating in a much more personalised way because they can. So think about that for a second and think about whether your element of the Australian experience is connected. Are you going to even be on the shopping list, which is in their phone, to be on their experience in Australia? That's a really, really important point. The other important point is once they get here, they have a limited amount of time. So how the hotel, the tour operators, the restaurant booking, the tourist attraction, how all of that comes together is really, really important, not only to allow the traveller to get the experience they want, but to ensure that you guys have the right aperture and capture the opportunity with that audience. And that's something that we're doing a lot of work with the team at TA, and we're seeing huge benefits from doing so. So watch this space on that. The other area of real evolution is the way the traveller shops the category. And this is purely a function of technology and accessibility, which is now prevalent in almost every part of the world. And to do so in a very Apple-like manner, what's really, really clear is the need to be intuitive and to really leverage all of the insights and all of the data that enables us to really understand what those high-value audiences are doing, how they feel, what they really want, and in turn, the sort of experiences they want to have, enables us to really apply some intuition, which is going to help and fuel what the traveller is looking for in terms of their experience here in Australia. So to give you some examples of how that intuitive nature is really important. The average American traveller is spending about a fortnight determining how and when they're going to get to Australia, and they book their ticket. And unlike in previous years where that window was a bigger window of research to buy the ticket, that ticket is being bought a little bit over a month before they actually travel. In previous times, that window was a lot larger, and we had a lot more time to actually sort of pre-scope and pre-book travellers. Another really interesting fact is that I saw recently before I left the US earlier this week was that once the ticket is booked, it takes on average about 6 weeks before a hotel is booked, if that window is there. So all of these changes to the cadence and the timing of things is something we really need to be mindful of, in particular with what messages we're sending out and whether those messages are going to be relevant or whether they're going to be irritating. And that's something that is a reality, and we can now measure that, which is a good thing. What that enables the traveller to do is to have some structured spontaneity. And if you think about how and what is available, because technology and because all of the utilities that are now on the person via the smartphone, spontaneity is now par for the course. And our travellers can be a lot more spontaneous because they're in control. And that's something that is a whole new paradigm, not just for destination marketing, but for every brand and every product around the world. And that's something that I think gives us huge opportunities moving forward. So if you think about spontaneity, what that actually means is that the traveller is not applying themselves to the static processes that once were and in some cases still are. So here are some things that maybe we need to start thinking about and maybe rethinking. The rewards programs that are currently in place are largely built out of a static platform. Do this and you will get that, and that the timing of those rewards is structured in a way that was built 10, 15 years ago. How do rewards get shorter, sharper, and faster? How do we leverage impromptu and micro stays? Something that is happening more and more as people come to Australia. That they're booked, but they leave themselves some open windows for them to be spontaneous and to experience and try things that they may come across that they didn't plan. That's really, really important. Another really big focus, which I'm sure all of you guys have seen and experienced, and Australia is one of the sort of leading markets, is peer-to-peer and advocacy-based tourism. Airbnb is probably the best example of that, where peers are supporting peers, peers are putting their offering on the market, and the engagement is very, very high. All you need to do is look at the success of Airbnb be cemented that that's definitely happening, and that will only increase. Airbnb is a really good example of just another disruption that is in the market. So there will be more, and a lot of those will be fueled by the fact that social and peer-to-peer and advocacy is the sort of currency that fuels these platforms. The last of the evolving points is the way in which we connect with travellers, and this is a really, really important piece. If you think about the notion of always on, does anybody, show of hands, does anyone ever leave home without their smartphone? There's one, I think I've just set myself a personal best. There's one person. Usually it's the exception. So the need for us to be always on is now is critical, because the consumer is always on, and when they're in tourist mode and when they are experiencing, they have more time. So the always on is actually longer than in the normal sort of working day to day. So here are some interesting points around the always on and how technology has really, really changed the game. And there's sort of 4 key buckets around access, control, binge, and avoiding. So everyone has access. Everyone is connected. That's a huge, huge change to the base. In terms of control, 2/3 are watching content on demand on their device. That's a really, really big percentage of the total audience, our high-value audiences, that are open and wanting to consume on demand via their mobile phone. That's a pretty dramatic change to what those stats looked like last year, let alone 5 years ago. That's ramping up. And the advent of operators like Netflix, Hulu, all the over-the-top players are now making it accessible no matter where you are, anywhere in the world. And Netflix is probably the best example of that. 26% of our travellers are binge, not just in drinking, they're binging on content, and that is increasingly becoming an opportunity as much as it is a threat to some of the channels that we've relied on so heavily, and that's really, really important. The last point that is a reality is that 1/4 of our audience choose to not receive advertising messages, and that's, one in 4 opt out. So the importance of content and the message becomes paramount. And that's something that, I think, everyone should be really, really proud of. The work that is being done through the various bodies, through Tourism Australia, really has sort of shown that content-based marketing is really how you future-proof a brand. And it's definitely, that's definitely the focus in terms of what we're doing in the future. And there are some really, really exciting and big initiatives that we've started talking about that hopefully this time next year we'll be able to showcase and get a lot of attention around. So if you think about all those sort of points that are sort of pretty much the reality of living now, it really sort of points to how much power the consumer and the traveller now has. And if you think about that power and then overlay, that power comes at a cost, and that cost is a lack of attention. The world has ADD. There's no question about that. Since 2000, we have lost 1/3 of our attention span, or willing attention span. And we now have, as at 2013, what was measured was that the average person had 8 seconds of attention. Anything beyond 8 seconds, you've lost them. The reality is, around today, we think 6 seconds is about the right measure for attention. And to get anything beyond 6 seconds, you need to really land it in the first 3 seconds. So they'll give you 6, sort of grudgingly, but if you land a message, or if your content is relevant in the first 3 seconds, you have the opportunity to engage with them on a much longer term basis. The other element is, with that power comes a much higher degree of expectation. And what was really interesting this year at CES, for any of you who were there, the star of the show was Alexa. And what was really, really amazing was how in 12 months, the entire electronics or consumer electronics category pivoted from smart device, utility-based to doesn't work within the Amazon ecosystem. And the Amazon ecosystem is largely now being driven by voice activated and voice. So as a brand, as a destination brand, we can't ignore that the whole notion of an Amazon, which is coming to Australia in a very, very short period of time. And I can tell you that because we manage the Amazon business on a global basis. That's going to mean we're going to need to adapt and connect into the Amazon ecosystem. And that means huge, huge upside for those that participate. And voice is going to be the interplay there. So making it easier is going to be par for the course. And with that the influence the individual has and that ability to leverage that influence through social channels and through blogs and through interactions becomes greater and greater and greater. And that's really important. And we heard on the panel the importance of social channels. So that's a sort of fast-track version of, there's some of the sort of tectonic plates that have moved and are continuing to move in marketing. And they shape a really exciting opportunity for us to sort of think about how we embrace these changes and how we have a think about destination marketing in a future-facing way, which is really, really exciting. So there are 5 trends that we want to touch on, and then hopefully we'll have some time for questions. And I won't labour those here. I'll work through those. And first is from mass to data-fueled personalisation. We now have, for the first time ever, we now have the ability to pivot from mass marketing to getting mass audiences through micro-targeting. There are enough platforms and there is enough data available to brands and to businesses for micro-targeting to become a mass proposition. And what that brings is a huge opportunity to personalise and to be really, really relevant in your messaging and in your approach to how you engage and you create a relationship with a traveller. If you do that, you have a 4 times better impact and a 4 times greater return on every dollar you spend in marketing. So it's material. So that pivot has a 4 times effect, and that's as a starting point. Once you start, that multiplier effect grows and grows and grows because your engagement is higher and higher and higher. Some really good examples of that are all over the place. I'm going to share with you a short video on some work that got our attention with Tennessee tourism, and then we'll move on.
Americans spend over 2 months researching where to go on vacation. They want every moment to be perfect. So we created a way to show them their perfect vacation without them having to do a thing. Introducing Tennessee Tourism's Vacation Matchmaker, the first ever pre-roll ads edited in real time to match your online behaviors, likes, and interests. Here's how it works. In the time it takes between page load and pre-roll play, Matchmaker analyzes millions of data points about you. Then, it scans a matrix of hundreds of video clips of Tennessee activities and edits a commercial perfectly matched to your interests. So let's say you're from St. Louis and you stream country music, make dinner reservations at steakhouses, subscribe to Outdoor Magazine. Destinations that match your online activities are instantly cut together as pre-roll. So rather than a tourism ad that tries to appeal to everyone, you see a custom vacation video created just for you. And instead of spending 45 days planning your vacation, you watch your vacation come to life over just 45 seconds. What's more, the geo-targeting filter makes sure all the attractions you see are within driving distance of your home. Then, you can explore the attractions featured in each scene of your vacation, so you can plan your real trip to Tennessee and share it with others. In just 2 weeks, the Tennessee Tourism website saw a 46% increase in site traffic, and proof that the campaign made a connection. 93% of those surveyed said they were planning on taking a vacation to Tennessee within the next year.
So hopefully you can see how different destination marketers are really leveraging the data. Sorry, I just said data. Oh my God, it happened. They're leveraging the data to not only impact how they target, but how they create the message around that particular individual. And that's increasingly becoming the norm. And that is what we refer to as content as opposed to advertising, which is now the new currency. So if you have to think about delivering personalised communications and how data enables us to do that, it really sort of sets the path for how and what we think the future looks like. So if you think about the future and then take a step back and contemplate how the whole marketplace, not just destination marketing, but also CPG and products and services around the world have been trying to buy attention, buying reach and buying scale through advertising and through media. That buying attention has quickly become an opportunity, but increasingly a challenge to earn that attention. And when you earn that attention, the likelihood of engagement, the likelihood of a return on that investment is exponentially higher. And if you think about attention in the world today, huge things have changed. 7 years ago, on average, the daily intake of different messages was about 1,800 messages per day. That was what was readily available through marketing channels, television, newspapers, et cetera, what we all sort of grew up with. Today, it's about 1,800 per minute. And a lot of that is being fueled through social channels. So when my wife posts a photo, that's another message that is cluttering my repertoire of things that I can engage with. So unless it's relevant, I'm going to ignore it. And that's really that's the challenge we have. But the solution to that challenge is relevant content that is personalised. And that's what we're really excited by the work that we're doing with Tourism Australia and the campaigns that we're rolling out and the campaigns that we're talking about is very much centred around personalised content that is relevant and that is going to create attention and keep the attention going. Something really, really important moving forward. So the need for relevance is critical, and that relevance being available and having proximity is how we're going to enable our high-value travellers to curate in a spontaneous way while they're here and when they get here. And that's a really, really important factor for all of us to always have top of mind. The last thing, or close to the last thing that we want to talk about is how and the different methods that brands are creating that attention and earning that attention, using and leveraging technology and things like VR, AI, and four-dimensional experiential opportunities are how we're seeing brands do that. Virtual reality is for destination brands the best way to give people an experience without being there and giving them a taste of what's to come. And I was fortunate enough to be with the gang in New York, and there was VR all over the place, and the people queued up to engage. New Yorkers who are pretty tech savvy, engaging and having an Aussie experience on a really, really cold winter's night was quite engaging. And the queues said it all. I thought that was really amazing. And that was, again, a very good representation of the high-value customer that we're all chasing and looking for. The other thing to keep in sight is when you apply that content and when you create those experiences, the paradigm shifts from push marketing to pull marketing. And the need for brands to pull their consumers and their advocates in is now more and more important than ever before. And that's largely because they are so attention deprived. And we see lots of different brands creating pull strategies that are really effective that we have to learn from, and that they form the greater part of what we're doing moving forward. So in doing so, to pull people in, the best thing to do is to be useful. And the strongest brands out in the world today, the fastest growing brands, are useful brands. Brands like Uber. Uber is useful. It's not only is it disrupting, but it's really useful. So if you think about utility and how we market Australia from a utility basis, it's a huge opportunity for us to extend and create further attention beyond that initial. And this is a really, really important point from Richard Holden at Google. We're doing a great job on the planning stages, but we really need to help consumers when they're actually at their destination. And this is something that Google, who are a pretty data-rich company, found out through Google Trips and their try at getting into the whole travel sector. And they learnt the hard way that doing too much up front and not leaving enough variety and enough dynamism once the traveller got to their destination was a real barrier. And it really sort of supports what we're seeing through the research and through the campaigns that we're launching. So the other reality in today's world is the need for authenticity and for brands to be authentic and for that authenticity to live on a day-to-day basis and through everyday situations. And Qantas have done some really, really beautiful work with their out-of-home function in their travelogue. The latest TA work that we did with Giga and really leveraging the selfie is groundbreaking work. We think the Giga has all sorts of potential moving forward and really changes the whole notion of a selfie and create utility in the selfie, which we're going to be rolling out more and more and more as campaigns roll out. But that authenticity through just real day examples is another way to not only get attention, but to keep that attention going on an ongoing basis, and also to share it, in particular with that out of office feature that Qantas have rolled out. So the real sort of challenge and the real task here is to create real value in the exchange, and that is really, really shining through experiential marketing. And if you look at how experiential marketing has increased over the last 5 years for destination brands, it's grown exponentially. And the reason why it's grown is because of the engagement, the attention, and the return on investment that is creating. And there are lots and lots of examples all over the world of really, really smart experiential marketing being integrated into broader marketing that is really making the difference, especially in that last mile where the consumer is considering but needs a little bit more proof or that little bit more of a nudge to make the decision and to make that commitment. And VR is the gateway to creating the fastest and the most lifelike immersive experience. And the stats are pretty amazing. I mean, 93% of consumers believe experiential marketing gives them a better and more positive understanding of a brand. 93%. That's pretty conclusive. And what's great is experiential and leveraging VR is very, very much part of what we're doing with TA. And you can see how different brands are doing that in different ways, from creating experiences that are real life experiences to using the goggles and to also using four-dimensional experiences, as in the case with Marriott, which is a really, really exciting and innovative way to enable travellers to experience what a Marriott experience is like, for example. So, to really be creating immersive experiences and to relate, they have to be almost unrelatable to start with. So it goes back to some of the comments that were made earlier around some of our travellers wanting really unique, deep experiences, and giving them a sense of that and allowing them to relate to that is critically important. Again, it needs to be authentic and it needs to engage in a meaningful and a personalised manner. And again, there are a number of different ways that different brands and different operators in the space have applied that. Airbnb have engaged and brought on local ambassadors. The Swedish tourism group did a really interesting campaign where they actually created a phone number, and on the other side of that phone number were Swedes, where you could actually call the number and you spoke to a Swedish person. And that gave people a sense of, you know, what Sweden is really like through their people. And it was authentic because many people loved the Swedes, but there were also people who didn't like the Swedes. And that truth and that authenticity is, you know, what consumers are looking for. They're looking for the truth. And I think that's a really, really good example. Marriott do a really good job of crowdsourcing real-time feedback so that they are, at any given point, they know that they can get a sense of what's going on and get a sense of what's the pulse of what's going on in their hotels anywhere around the world in real time. Something that's really, really important. So authenticity equals influence, and influence is now the key currency for advocacy and for us leveraging peer-to-peer. Something that we're seeing come to life through platforms like Facebook, Snap, and the equivalent platforms in China, in India, in Korea, in Taiwan, all the markets that have their own bespoke platforms as well. So on that note, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and present. I think we have a little bit of time left, so if we have some questions, I'm more than happy to take them. Thank you.
Any questions for Henry? No? Can I ask one, Henry?
Sure.
So, what do you do if you're a small to medium business with a limited marketing budget? What's the best strategy for you?
How long do you have?
We have 6 minutes.
Well, if you're a small to medium business, then by sheer virtue of the fact that you're small, you need to take a less is more strategy. So investing in understanding your customer is probably the most important thing you do. So what mechanisms and what systems do you have to really capture who your customer really is? And does that enable you to create and continue a relationship that enables you to get to know them better and better over time, which then gives you the insight to understanding how and what they're looking for, how to communicate with them, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so we've got a 6-second attention span, and you've got 3 seconds once you've done that research to reach out and grab the customer. What can you do in 3 seconds?
But you can do a lot in 3 seconds.
Okay.
The first thing you can do is, if you leverage the data and the knowledge that you have, cut to the chase. Be direct. And what that will do is that will not only enable you to get the attention of your high-value audience, but it will actually save you money. Because if you are investing in an audience that isn't going to give you attention, you shouldn't be investing in that audience anymore. So that, I think the advice we're giving our clients is find that single point of attention that's going to land in that first 1 or 2 seconds
and start
with that.
An image? Or is that,
it could be an image.
Like 3 words a second, so you got, 9 words? It
could be an image, it could be a word. Different customers engage and react to different senses. Some people are visual, some people prefer sound, some people just need text. It varies. What we're seeing through the data that we have is that it's very easy to work out whether you're a visual person and you need something that's going to stimulate visually, or whether you need a word that's going to either engage or not. So all that is readily available. And we can factor that into how we create messages and how they get rolled out.
We had kangaroos shagging by the moon earlier today.
Well,
that made an impact on
that's an
everybody.
interesting
That was
image.
pretty good. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how you'd use that in your marketing.
Someone would like it.
Before we let you go, it seems like, I don't know about you, but for me, like the thing that has resonated through most of the speeches today has been the growing importance of social media and the contact that it gives you. And you're talking about being able to mass market, but in a completely different way.
Yeah.
So how many platforms do you need to be on?
Well,
and how do you manage that? Because that's a lot of platforms.
The best answer is you have to sort of be on all the platforms because different people have different platforms and different generations of travellers and different age groups are sort of gravitating towards different platforms. So obviously Facebook and the equivalent big play platforms are critical. Having a blog, using Snap is a really huge opportunity for the entire world now. So you have to use all of those, but if you're not on a social platform, start with one, and depending on where in the category you are, what's the sweet spot in terms of what generation are you sort of targeting, and that's a pretty easy filter to determine whether you go on Snap or whether you start on Facebook. And from there, you start and that will fuel your growth.
And do you tailor the message according to the platform, or is it as simple as coming up with your magic 3 seconds that's going to grab people's attention and go, okay, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, bang.
When you get more advanced, you can have a console-like approach where you can have all the platforms and then determine what type of message is going to be best for that micro target. But the platforms are fantastic in that they provide a lot of that insight, and all of that data that is available comes from those platforms. So there's a bit of a self-serve proposition that is part of those platforms. So you start with one, and then you get to a point where you are sort of turning all the different platforms on, depending on the campaign.
I'm exhausted just thinking about it, but congratulations, Henry. That was a fantastic presentation. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen,
thank you, guys.
Henry Taser.
Thanks, Chris.